Every Christmas we are told Rudolph was a timeless lesson in kindness, but the truth is far darker. In 1939, a cash-strapped department store forced a grieving copywriter to invent Rudolph while his wife lay dying, turning personal despair into a corporate product. The beloved red-nosed reindeer began as a symbol of exploitation and conditional acceptance, not a heartwarming myth. How did a story written in heartbreak become a billion-dollar empire, and what have we never been told about the pain behind Rudolph's shiny nose? In 1939, Montgomery Ward headquarters in Chicago buzzed with a singular, pressing goal: cut holiday expenses while keeping families coming through the doors. For years, the department store had purchased millions of coloring books from outside publishers to hand out as Christmas freebies. The accounting department saw a leak in profits. Why buy someone else's book when they could create their own and own the rights forever? The directive landed on the desk of Robert L. May, a 34-year-old copywriter. His assignment was to invent an original Christmas story, 8 to 10 pages, centered on an animal character. The story needed to be cheerful, memorable, and cheap to print. It was not about tradition or folklore. It was about cost saving and building brand loyalty. May began brainstorming names. Early drafts starred Rollo and Reginald, but executives dismissed both as either too silly or too stiff. The pressure mounted. The company wanted something catchy but not comical, a name that would stick in a child's mind but still feel respectable to parents. Inspiration finally struck after a visit to the Lincoln Park Zoo with his daughter Barbara. She loved the deer, and May settled on Rudolph. But the next hurdle nearly killed the project before it began. May's concept included a reindeer with a glowing red nose. To 1930s corporate eyes, a red nose was shorthand for drunkenness, a detail that sent the proposal straight to the reject pile. Executives worried the story would be seen as a joke, or worse, as promoting bad behavior to children. May called in Denver Gillen, a staff illustrator, to sketch a version of the reindeer that looked innocent and endearing, not like a barroom regular. Gillen's drawings, wide-eyed, playful, and wholesome, softened corporate resistance. The red nose stayed. The project was approved not because of magic or meaning, but because the numbers finally added up. Rudolph was born from a cost-saving memo and a handful of nervous executives, not from the fireside dreams of a storyteller. Evelyn May spent the last months of her life in a small Chicago apartment, the air heavy with the scent of medicines and the hush of a family waiting for the inevitable. Robert May moved between his job at Montgomery Ward and his wife's bedside, each day measured by the ticking of a clock he could not stop. Their daughter Barbara, just 4-year-old, watched her mother fade while her father tried to keep the household afloat. The cancer would not let go. Hospital bills piled up on the kitchen table, each envelope a reminder of what they could not afford. May's salary as a copywriter barely covered groceries, let alone the cost of treatment. He wrote in later years that the only escape from the dread at home was the forced cheer of his office. He admitted in a 1975 article that he dreaded going home because he had to pretend everything was all right for Barbara. The house grew quieter as Evelyn's strength ebbed. May's notebooks from that winter and spring are lost, but his own words survive. He described feeling numb, hollowed out by fear and guilt. He buried himself in work, clinging to the Christmas assignment from Montgomery Ward as a lifeline. The story he began to write about a small reindeer shunned for being different became a secret conversation with his own pain. Each evening, after Barbara was asleep, May sat at the kitchen table, scribbling verses while his grandmother slept in the next room. He told friends later that he poured every ounce of loneliness and worry into those pages, unable to find comfort anywhere else. On July 28, 1939, Evelyn died. May was left with a mountain of debt, a grieving child, and a manuscript about an outcast no one wanted. He wrote that he needed Rudolph now more than ever, and gratefully he buried himself in the writing. The world would soon know the story of the red-nosed reindeer, but the truth was that Rudolph's first Christmas was born not out of wonder, but out of heartbreak. The first lines of Robert May's 1939 manuscript do not offer comfort. They land like a confession. He was no ordinary reindeer, he was an embarrassment to his folks. The word embarrassment sits heavy on the page, a reflection of May's own sense of failure as a husband and father. In the original booklet, Rudolph's difference is not a source of pride, it is a stain. His parents are depicted as quietly ashamed, keeping their distance from the little reindeer with the glowing nose. The other young reindeer are not just teasing, they exclude him, refusing to let him join their games. The illustrations show Rudolph standing alone in the snow, his nose burning bright while the others turn away. The story unfolds in steady, rhyming couplets, but the tone is far from jolly. Rudolph is left to wander the edges of his own world, wondering why he was born different, longing for a place to belong. May's verses echo with isolation. They jeered and they taunted, they laughed at his nose. Poor Rudolph, he wished he could hide it, he knows. There is no gentle lesson here, only the ache of being unwanted. Santa's arrival changes nothing for Rudolph until the weather turns. On Christmas Eve, as fog rolls in thick from Lake Michigan, Santa faces the prospect of canceling his deliveries. He stumbles upon Rudolph, whose nose glows like a beacon through the mist. Santa does not offer comfort or kindness. He sees a solution. Santa says, "Your nose can guide my sleigh tonight." In that moment, Rudolph's worth is measured entirely by his usefulness. The other reindeer who spent the story shunning him are suddenly willing to follow his lead, but only after Santa's approval. The acceptance is conditional, transactional. May's original ending does not erase the pain of exclusion. It simply covers it with a thin layer of praise once Rudolph proves himself valuable. The manuscript's pages, now faded and fragile, reveal a story that is less about joy and more about survival. Rudolph's triumph is not a celebration of difference, but a reminder that acceptance in this world comes at a price. For May, who wrote these lines in the shadow of grief and debt, the red nose was never a symbol of hope. It was a mark he could not escape. Montgomery Ward printed 2.4 million copies of the Rudolph booklet in 1939, handing them out free to children who visited the store with their parents. The scale was unprecedented. No holiday story had ever reached so many American homes in a single season. Parents tucked the slim, brightly illustrated pamphlet into shopping bags, and children clutched it on the streetcar ride home. The company's bet had paid off, and Rudolph was a sensation. But for Robert L. May, the numbers brought no relief. He remained a salaried copywriter, earning the same modest paycheck as before, even as his creation spread across the country. The copyright belonged entirely to Montgomery Ward. The more copies they gave away, the more invisible May became. World War II brought a pause. Paper shortages meant the booklet disappeared from stores for 6 years. When the war ended, Montgomery Ward revived the giveaway in 1946 with a print run of 3.6 million copies. By the late 1940s, over 6 million Rudolph booklets had been distributed, an audience larger than the population of Chicago, New York, and Los Angeles combined at the time. Still, May's financial situation had not improved. He received no royalties, no bonuses, no share of the success. The story he wrote to survive his own heartbreak was now a fixture of American Christmas, and yet he remained buried in debt from Evelyn's medical bills, struggling to support his daughter alone. This was the standard arrangement in the world of corporate publishing. Stories created on company time belonged to the company, not the writer. Historians point to the era's work-for-hire contracts, which treated creative labor like any other office task, replaceable, anonymous, and fully owned by the employer. As millions of children read about Rudolph's lonely journey and sudden usefulness, the man who invented him was left behind, watching his own life slip further from stability. The injustice wasn't just personal, it was systemic. The reach of Rudolph's story only deepened the gap between its impact and its creator's reward. While the booklet became a holiday tradition, May's name and needs were erased from the corporate celebration. The red-nosed reindeer soared, but the man who gave him life remained grounded, unpaid, and unseen. On January 1st, 1947, something almost unheard of happened in corporate America. Montgomery Ward President Sewell Avery signed over the full copyright to Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, handing it back to Robert L. May as a so-called Christmas gift. No money changed hands, no royalties were owed to the store. The company simply walked away from a property that had already reached more than 6 million American households. The move was so rare that even May called it a miracle, also. Until that moment, Rudolph had been nothing but a promotional tool owned and controlled by the store that commissioned him. Now, for the first time, May could license his story, print it in hardcover, and finally try to earn back a fraction of what he had lost to hospital bills and years of corporate anonymity. The transfer did not erase May's grief or debt, but it cracked open a door. He turned to family. His brother-in-law, Johnny Marks, was a commercial songwriter with a knack for holiday jingles. May handed over the manuscript, hoping that a song could reach even more people and maybe, just maybe, turn Rudolph into something bigger than a department store freebie. Marks took the manuscript and began to reshape it. The result was a 3-minute tune that would soon drown out every other version of the story. The song that emerged would change everything. The 1949 song, recorded by Gene Autry, did not just retell May's poem, it rewrote it. Marks sanded down the sharp edges, stripping away the shame, the isolation, the daily cruelty. The other reindeer no longer stood as silent witnesses to Rudolph's loneliness. They became cartoon bullies, laughing and calling him names, but never truly cruel. The biggest change came in the final verse, then how the reindeer loved him as they shouted out with glee. In May's original, the acceptance was conditional, almost reluctant. In Marks's lyrics, it turned instant, jubilant. The reindeer's love arrived the moment Rudolph proved himself useful, as if all the years of exclusion could be wiped away with a single act. This was a deliberate rewrite of the story's moral. Gene Autry's recording hit store shelves in the fall of 1949. Within months, it had sold 2 million copies, becoming the second best-selling Christmas song in American history after White Christmas. The song's success transformed Rudolph from a struggling copywriter's lifeline into a pop culture juggernaut. But the new version came at a cost. The pain and ambiguity of May's original story, the sense that acceptance sometimes comes with strings attached, was replaced by a clean, redemptive arc. The world now sang about a misfit who saved Christmas, cheered by his peers, loved at last. Few listeners ever heard the lines about shame or saw the lonely reindeer standing in the snow. The corporate machine had found its perfect product, a story that could be sold, sung, and celebrated, stripped of the sorrow that gave it life. On December 6, 1964, American families gathered around their television sets for the debut of a new holiday special. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, produced by Rankin Bass, flickered to life in stop-motion animation. Its puppets crafted in Japan and its soundtrack already familiar from the Gene Autry hit. The broadcast drew over 50 million viewers. Overnight, Rudolph's story, now padded with new characters and softened edges, became the definitive version for generations to come. Rankin Bass did not just adapt May's booklet or Johnny Marks's song, they expanded the universe. Hermie the elf, who dreams of dentistry, Yukon Cornelius the eternal prospector, and the island of misfit toys all entered the canon. The abominable snow monster loomed as an external threat, shifting the story's focus from social rejection to adventure. Even Rudolph's parents, once ashamed in May's manuscript, became protectively anxious, their embarrassment diluted by concern. The cruelty of the original reindeer was recast as comic teasing, and the narrative now promised that every misfit elf, toy, or reindeer had a place if only they found the right audience. This televised reinvention was not just about storytelling, it was about market reach. The Rankin Bass special aired every December for decades, outlasting network changes, sponsor swaps, and shifting cultural tastes. Each rerun brought new waves of merchandise, plush toys, vinyl records, lunchboxes, pajamas, and ornaments. By the late 20th century, Rudolph had become a fixture in holiday retail, his red nose stamped on everything from cereal boxes to theme park rides. The economic footprint is staggering, even if the precise numbers are locked away in private ledgers. The song alone sold more than 25 million copies, and the television special remains one of the most watched Christmas programs in United States history, with annual audiences of 10 to 15 million. Licensing deals and product tie-ins have generated hundreds of millions of dollars over the decades. The character's value is now measured in the high 8 or 9 figures, a fortune built on a story born from grief and corporate necessity. In 2013, the original 1939 manuscript, Robert May's typescript, covered in handwritten edits and Denver Gillen's sketches, was sold at auction for $368,000. The price tag reflected not only nostalgia, but the power of a story refashioned and multiplied by the machinery of American commerce. The manuscript that once sat on a grieving father's kitchen table now sits in a collector's vault, while Rudolph's image continues to churn out profits every holiday season. The sanitized, animated Rudolph became the one the world remembers, not the lonely reindeer of May's winter nights, but the smiling mascot who saved Christmas and in doing so built an empire. Rudolph's story isn't just a holiday myth. It is proof that even the loneliest pain can be transformed into billion-dollar nostalgia, then sold back to us as comfort. Today, corporations still repackage trauma for profit, shaping what we teach our children about worth. The brightest nose in Christmas history is a reminder. Who profits from our stories and what truths get left in the snow? Share your thoughts below.